Hi, I'm Garnbreak1, and this is Midgardia's cool crowdfunding show. I'm here today with Kelphasiel. How's it going?
All good, all good. How about yourself?
I'm
Happy to
doing.
be here.
I'm happy to have you here. So while you're here, tell us a little bit about Starlight Arcana. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Oh man. So this is always like the difficult point, right? Where they ask you, sell us your product or something like that.
You've
Like
got
it's like such a
15
big
seconds.
question.
Go.
Yeah, exactly. Like give us the elevator pitch or something, you know? So yeah, where do I start? Starlight Arcana is a 5e book to begin with. And it's something that we're trying to make as big as possible, which is very, very important to mention from the get-go. It's going to be both for players and for DMs. We wanted to make something that a player can be just as excited to pick up as a DM would be. And it's going to be all astral themed. The theme is very, very important in this case because we have a huge love for stars. Everybody involved in the project has a huge love for stars. And we decided a year ago, I came up with the idea of wanting to make something that big, like the whole idea of Starlight Arcana. I actually saw a couple of illustrations with a couple of galaxy ladies, as they are called, the illustrations themselves. And I was like, okay, that's fantastic. What if we made something with beings of ethereal presence and whatnot in the astral realm? And it just evolved. I started talking with Ori, the cartographer, who is the map maker and graphic designer on the project. And then I met Dusky Cat, who is the lead illustrator and helps with a lot with art direction. And the whole project just, started, you know, taking form in a way. And it wasn't just in my head anymore. It was very surreal, actually. And having said that, it was very surreal because I only started a year ago, like with the whole, TTRPG stuff. So making this project was like a big dream. So anyway, it's a huge book. It's going to be 500 plus pages. It's going to be a supplement and a campaign. We're talking like new ancestry, spells, subclasses, weapons, and then we have a whole 3-act campaign where you get to go to the stars and explore other planets with their own new alien races, their new adventures, new all sorts of NPCs, new things to actually discover like everywhere. And there's a whole plot, of course. Like I'm primarily an art designer, so I put a lot of effort into this, even though it's not the main thing that we market. The most effort that went into Starlight Arcana is actually the campaign design because I made like the whole kind of like a Diablo-esque kind of feeling where you start like with a linear path and kind of opens into an open world kind of like thing. And yeah, there's a lot to talk about, but that's the basic theme. It's all astral. That's the main thing. Yeah, I hope did that sell it? Did I do well?
I mean, I love fantasy space. It's excellent.
Oh,
Swashbuckling
and
amongst the stars.
yeah, and I have to say, you know how Spelljammer is coming out like literally a month before our project. We did not have a single clue when Spelljammer was gonna come out. When it did get announced, we were like, oh no, or oh yes, I don't know. Like we didn't know how to feel. We honestly didn't know how to feel because we're like, okay, is this going to mess up our our promotion and anything? Because everybody's gonna be focused on Spelljammer, or is it actually going to help because everybody's gonna be focused on Spelljammer? So it still is a double-edged knife. We really hope it's going to help in a way. We might get really lucky, because of the whole thing with the whole hype about Astral stuff. But yeah, we do have a plan actually. Like you might be I think you're the first one where I'm saying this. I really mean this, by the way. You might be the first one where I'm saying this, that the second book is actually already being planned. It's already being designed, and it's going to be all sips, like all astral sips. But it was already, like, before Spelljammer again, it was already, like, in the works because we wanted to basically populate, the whole universe of Starlight Arcana with something more. But yeah, I don't know. We'll see. Everybody's making sips now, so we'll see how well that does in the future. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely both sides of it. Like, I mean, I think this does feel a slightly different niche than like standard Spelljammer. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
it seems like a slightly different tone than the incredibly goofy like space
It
imperialist
is.
hippos, you know?
I'm glad you're saying that because it really is. I wanted to make it like a bit more serious, of course,
Hmm.
because there is like a dire danger, like a grand scheme, a big picture that is happening with the whole plot. But at the same time, I didn't want it to be like the silly goofiness of Spelljammer, and I wanted at the same time also to make it much simpler because when I played D&D, I've played TTRPGs for over 20 years now. I played since I was 11, and the thing is, whenever I play D&D and I love astral stuff, I mean, obviously, if that wasn't obvious at this point, um, whenever I want to introduce astral stuff as a DM, I just find it so difficult because there's always like the astral plane and all the rules that the players need to know, and it's high level stuff. You mostly have wizards going there. Anyway, all that kind of stuff. So I was like, I don't like that. I want something more approachable that people can actually play and they don't have to worry about all these rules and different things that they need to know. They're just sailing in space. Where did that go? Like we have so much fiction that does that, like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy and all these other things that do it so well, like, and are not necessarily always sci-fi, right? They're not always hardcore sci-fi. They're not all Star Trek. And we have all these things. Like, I love Star Wars because it does science, it does sci fantasy. It doesn't do sci-fi. Like the distinction, like not everything needs to be explained. And nobody questions how the ships fly. Of course there is some research behind it now. There's a lot of explanations, but nobody questions how the force works. You just trust in it. So that kind of fantasy is gone in a way from D&D when it comes to the astral stuff. And I wanted to bring it back in a way and give it like, with a nice plot, some cool characters, to guide you through them, introduce you to like cool new Starlight spells and whatnot. Like, of course we're gonna do like, a lot of flashy stuff. People love flashy stuff. I love flashy stuff. It's not just to sell. But we really wanted to marry it all together, like we have like space beasts, we have like all these kind of like void creatures that have been corrupted by a strange kind of like magic that is taking over and whatnot. I'm not going to reveal too much about that, I don't want to spoil it, but you get the idea. Like, you meet a void cat, you don't have to explain everything behind it. You don't have to understand why mind flayers exist, they just do. Like nobody knows, like nobody I most of the people that I know, they don't know where mind flayers come from. Like they just know that they're space quids and they're dangerous, and you should not, do anything with them. That's it. You're in danger if they're anywhere close to you. So that kind of magic, I feel, is hard to give to players when you have the basic D&D stuff. Like, the astral plane stuff is very difficult to adapt to your campaigns. There are a lot of people, fantastic writers out there that have done a lot of good job, like a lot of good works with astral plane. I'm not saying there's nothing, but at least from the official stuff, there's nothing as far as I know. But from third party stuff, there's not that much that is like nicely collected into a big 500 pages book that is called Starlight Arcana. I love that I managed to like kind of like cue in the promo again. No, but anyway, you get my point. Like
Yeah.
it's a big dream. Our main goal is to print the book, and then we started adding like some extra stuff here and there. We tried to be very careful with the whole Kickstarter thing because you know yourself probably that the whole crisis with the shipping and all these things. We tried to keep it as reasonable as possible so that people can actually get the book without paying like hundreds of dollars and all the extra fancy stuff that would be like printing maps and whatnot. Because we're very very proud of the printing maps, by the way. If you haven't seen Ori the Cartographer's work, definitely go check it out. It's fantastic. I'm very very honored to actually have Ori as one of our main collaborators on the project. But yeah. Sorry, yeah, that was a long answer to your question. That's Starlight Arcana.
No, that's good. That's good. Why don't you tell me about the Starlight School of Magic? Like, what makes that cool and interesting?
Oh man. Okay, so I have to start from the DM's Guild actually, because I actually started my whole company and the whole idea of working with TTRPGs when I was playing with some friends, and I took the art of an artist who I asked, like, "Hey, I love your art, and you have like all these knights and whatnot." Like, it was basically a night lady in different poses and whatnot. It was during Nightober, and I asked her, "Hey, can I use your artworks for my personal D&D campaign?" And said, "Yeah, sure, go ahead." And I basically used like a whole bunch of riddles in the Tower of the Starlight Knight, and she was basically like a knight that once lived there with a whole backstory and whatnot. It was really cool. I think at least. And my players, after they finished like 3 sessions or something, they came to me and said, "Hey, which module was that?" I was like, "No, I wrote this." And they're like, "You should publish this." I'm like, "No, get out of here. I'm not gonna publish it. What are you on about?" Like, I've always played TTRPGs with friends, I never even thought about publishing something. So I thought about it a little bit. I messaged the artist and I said, "Hey, do you mind if I put this together as a PDF? Like, I'll do some research on how to do this, and I'll put it together as a PDF, and we'll put it for free on the DM's Guild." And it's like, "Yeah, sure." And it got like 7,000 likes or something on Instagram. I was like, all right, there's something there, and people love the story. They were leaving reviews on the story. I'm like, oh wow, I'm an artist designer. I'm not saying like it was the first time that I got compliments for something like that. I'm not trying to brag about it either, but it was surprising nonetheless. Like you can imagine how I felt. So the whole idea of the Starlight Night, I already had like, a bit of an idea of like working with the magic taken from the stars that you see, during the night sky and things like that. I already loved astral stuff, like, from before. But that basically gave birth to so many more ideas that I wanted to like, implement after the Starlight Night. Like I wrote another adventure after that that had a lot of like, introduced like the first 5 Starlight spells. It's just started going like, forward. And I started having comments from people. Like I opened my Patreon and I started having comments from people saying, "Hey, are we going to see a Starlight Knight subclass? Are we going to see spells?" I'm like, "Oh my god, these people want content, like I don't know if I'm ready for this." So basically, the Starlight School of Magic, going back to my previous point, where I really want to keep things simple. I didn't want to introduce a whole new school of magic, obviously, because that would just confuse people. Like, of course. But I figured, if we're going to do something like that, we really need to organize it properly and make it like, its own subcategory. So if you're casting something, basically, if the stars are visible, you can cast Starlight Magic spells. However, if they're not, if you're in a cave or something, you can distill the Starlight and have it like ounces of Starlight, like distilled Starlight. It's a new type of item. And you can use it as a component to actually cast the Starlight spells, even in the dark. So that's, it kind of like explains the science behind the Starlight Magic a little bit of how it's cast. But yeah, you get the idea. It's really, we try to keep both the mystical and also the science behind it. Like the main thing about my setting is always that you can be as talented as you want in magic, but if you haven't studied it, you will be just as crappy as the other person that doesn't know anything about it. So it's really important to actually not just be like, just, oh, I have talent in casting magic. No, you actually spend time to actually study and see how these things work. You study the spells, like all these things. And then there's the other side, which is basically being more of an astromancer, more of the scientist kind of like, person. Which even if you don't have the talent, you can understand starlight magic, and that's the cool thing. You can take to the stars and study them up close, study other planets, study what they do. So all these things are we're trying to implement in the book. And I say we because it's not just myself. I do take a lot of feedback from friends of mine, from other writers that I work with. I may be writing the whole book on my own, but it would be foolish and very dishonest to say that to take credit all of it on my own. Like I do get a lot of help from people that give me a lot of brilliant ideas, and that really needs to be said. But yeah, that's Starlight Magic. It does have quite the backstory, doesn't it?
It does. I like that. I like stealing the light of stars and like keeping it in a vial so I can, whip some sort of stellar fireball at somebody's face.
Yeah. There might be stellar fireballs now that you say that. Actually, we do not have stellar fireballs, but that sounds pretty cool. We might have to consider that.
Excellent, excellent. That's gonna be my legacy is like leaving small
Yeah,
things in various games with like offhand comments.
I will tell you if we do make a stellar fireball, I will most definitely make a reference to you. Like something will be in there for sure.
Excellent. Appreciate it. Uh, so how how did you come about like wanting to do a tarot deck as a companion for this?
Oh, that is another great question actually. Man, I feel like you researched all these questions because we never spoke about this before actually. So yeah, the tarot deck. This is a good question because when we were making the project, as I said earlier, we don't want to make something that is going to be super expensive or like with things that are just fancy stuff that are just extra. I get that dice are cool, but if you want the Quickstart box and you're a new player, yes, there will be a set of dice that is fantastic because you get to have a set of dice directly with the game, right? But if it's not useful in any way, I get that people want fancy stuff and pretty stuff, but we try to keep costs to a minimum so that we can also help the backers, afford it. So one of the things that we really considered is we really wanted a raw deck, but we wanted to be usable. And I really, really mean that. I didn't want just a fancy, deck of cards. I wanted to have a deck of cards that has meaning both for the players and for the DM. And that means basically, we're going to explain this in the Kickstarter as well, but you're the first one to hear this because you asked the great questions. So, that's great. You actually got me very excited for this because, as I said, we haven't explained it before. The players, there is the Fate Weaver subclass for the Sorcerer, who is basically, you can become an orb, a crystallomancy, You can go with crystallomancy, which you have like an orb where you can tell fate and whatnot, and like alter the fate of people. You're basically altering the fates of the threads of fate. We have art for that as well, by the way, and it's fantastic. And you can become necromancy. You speak with the dead, basically, but not like the cleric kind of like a necromancer, but more kind of like the mystical arts, kind of like arcane sorcery kind of thing. You can do pyromancy and hydromancy, like see the future and the past in the flames and in the water. Or you can become a fortune teller, which, they have their own tarot deck. And with the tarot deck, you already know the deck of many things and all these other things, how those tables work. The way I basically did it is that I made it way less kind of randomness and more focused on how you want to play it. So pulling certain cards, you have certain abilities that are a little bit more board gamey kind of like, design there that allow you to manipulate the deck in ways that allows you to use it in combat. So, you pull a certain card or you pull three cards and you choose one from them and you may alter the effects based on the other cards that you pulled, like, things like that. You basically see the future, see what is happening. You try to like, kind of interpret it as the, the Fate Weaver, the more RP part of it. And then you use the, the tarot cards to basically cast spells, which I'm super excited for. I know it's only one of the many subclasses, but I would say it's the one that we worked on the most, like definitely the most. And on the DM side, the tarot cards are also very important because they're basically the things that the main character, Alia, the Astromancer, is looking for them. And when you find them, you start unlocking parts of the story. And if you do have a Fate Weaver, Sorcerer, or Sorceress in your party, then even cooler because you get to give them to the player and they get to use them. So they add them to the deck and it becomes I'm very, very, very excited for that part because it marries interesting game design with good narrative design, like it's I can attest for the quality of the narrative design. We will see about the game design. We still have a lot of testing to do, so I can't say good on that part yet. But yeah, that's why we're doing a tarot deck. Like that is the long and very detailed answer for it, I would say.
Right on. And the art is wonderful on both the book and the tarot deck. Like
Thank you. Thank you.
I love the what's the word? Like monochromatic but for blue.
Yeah. I actually, blue is my least favorite color, by the way. I have to say that purple is my favorite color, but it just looks fantastic. Like the blue into purple was exactly the kind of thematic color that we needed. So I was like, okay, we can go with blue.
Fine, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. I guess it looks fine. We'll go with that.
Uh,
But yeah, no, thank you. The cover art is made by Felcat Accelero on Instagram. She's a Russian artist who I have been in contact with for over 2 years now. She makes fantastic artwork. And the tarot cards are all made by Dusky Cat, our lead illustrator, who is also a huge plays a huge part in art direction.
nice, nice. Is there a backing level just for the tarot deck?
There is not, I believe,
Uh,
but we have been heavily considering it because we know people will ask for it. So I believe there will be. It
excellent.
is very safe to say that there will be because that is one of the things that we actually thought about. Because you know that there's a lot of people that will go to a project and be like, "Oh, hey, I just want this fancy thing." So there will be a way to add it in add-ons, for example, if you back at the lowest tier and then go to the Pledge Manager and basically unlock it.
Okay, right on.
Yeah,
Because like I usually play everything digitally. Maybe I just want the physical tarot deck.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear that because it's sweet. Like I don't collect tarot decks. I don't collect dice. I may pick up this tarot deck.
Yeah. I'm glad you're saying that.
Oh,
Every single artwork, by the way, is something from the story itself.
nice.
Like it's connected in a way, and there's a reason why the players should not see all of it. But even if they do, they wouldn't understand a lot of things. But when they see it later, they will be like, "Oh, now I see." That makes sense.
It's all coming together. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
that thing from
I mean, I,
before.
I don't want to overhype it, but yes, there is a lot of connection there.
Excellent. And there's a lot to this book. I think you said 500 pages or something. Like
Yes.
200
Um,
monsters, 50
yeah.
spells.
I mean, look at it this way. We have only 13 planets without the stretch goals. The stretch goals have like another 4 planets or something. And every planet has about 20 unique monsters. In
Wow.
not including the NPCs. So there's a lot there. You will meet new alien races, as I said, on some planets. So they have their own completely new and different archetype. So we didn't just take. It was very difficult actually to do most of this. Oh, and by the way, I need to mention that at least 75 to 80% of the book is already made. By the way, like that's why I said
Nice.
we have been working hard on it, and we're very very keen on actually starting a project for something that we already have, like almost completed in our hands. Because I felt huge anxiety when I thought about running the Kickstarter. I immediately felt huge anxiety thinking that we're not gonna show something to people, something that we haven't made to people, right? Like it's like selling air. Like in the past, Kickstarters were somewhat like that. You had an idea and you would just put it on Kickstarter. But now people want to see something that, they can touch, they can look at, they know what they're getting. And especially for first-time creators such as ourselves, it was a bit difficult of a decision to actually go on to Kickstarter with something not complete or at least near completion. So when I say these numbers, like 20 creatures on some planets and whatnot, they're actually real numbers. It's not just like, oh, we're just planning it or something. But yeah, so you said 500 pages. Yeah, think of like each planet has at least 20 creatures, and it was impossible actually to just take a goblin, like from the system reference document, which a lot of people do. It's the smart thing to do, right? As a writer, you go to the SRD, you take a goblin or a hobgoblin or whatever, or a lich or whatever, and you just change the stats a little bit and make it custom. And cool, you have a new monster. Like that's the easy way to do it. We couldn't do that because we want to present a whole new monster, a whole new planet, a whole new feeling. Yes, of course, there's going to be a lot of abilities like evasion and like camouflage and all these things. Of course, there's going to be these things, but there will be a lot of new things that you may not recognize and the players will have to adapt to. The whole idea of the way that I approach narrative design when it comes to anything, not just TTRPGs, is generally that I want to teach the players as they play and slowly get them to be smarter on their own. So when they reach like the more difficult levels, they will be like, hey, we have encountered this before, we know how to deal with this and this. Maybe it's kind of the same pattern. It's kind of like playing a video game basically, which is a fantastic way of looking at it. Like you go through the dungeon, you fight one boss, he has this mechanic. You fight another boss, he has this mechanic, and then you fight the big boss, he has both mechanics. You're like, I know now, I know what you're doing. So like little things here and there, like elements here and there for the monsters, elements here and there for the adventures. There's going to be something repetitive for the adventures, which will slowly become more apparent. Like all these kinds of stuff are like in the campaign. So in order to implement all these things, you need a lot of pages,
Yeah.
like a
Um,
lot.
I'm really seeing the narrative designer background coming through here,
Yeah, yeah.
and that's a good thing, to be clear. Uh, are there any other elements you'd like to highlight, like any of the ancestry options? I don't think we've really gone into.
Oh man, we haven't even revealed all of the ancestry options actually. We wanted to go with the more catchy ones, or the ones that are more important, at least to the story. So the ethereals, who basically their planet was destroyed. Think of like Alderaan vibes, and and basically when they lived on their planet, they used to survive on an essence called the Aether. And I know there's a lot of systems out there that use the word ether, by the way. I'm very, very conscious of that. But I don't know, it just fits. I wanted to use it as well, but we put like a little Y there to like differentiate.
Good,
So
good.
anyway, when they lived there, that's the essence that they basically fed on, the thing that they consumed in order to basically stabilize their bodies and keep on living. They're genderless beings, by the way, and they live in a society that is very kind of like all together kind of thing. Like they're very close to each other as a species. And when their planet got destroyed for unknown reasons, you don't know why, you might find out in the campaign, wink wink. And after that, they went all around the galaxy, becoming traders or doing the illegal way of finding essence, becoming pirates. So they really needed to still find essence. So their one way of doing it was trading other goods in order to find things that, would feed, would quench their hunger, their thirst for ether, or they would force other people. So they became pirates and they started basically abducting people, which is quite dark, by the way. This is the darkest part of the campaign of the story, because there are these ethereal corsairs, these astral buccaneers that basically can take you, abduct you, and basically use very weird technology to kind of like take your soul in a way, kind of like to extract ether from you just to feed themselves. And there's like, we have art for like, showing how an ethereal could be unstable and kind of like withering away with their parts of their body kind of like, fading. Yeah, we have a work in progress name, the mini Aetherials. They're gonna be like the gnome version. We're still working on that, but we have some cool concepts for them that I cannot reveal yet. We have the crystalloids, which are basically have their own planet, basically like kind of like think of like all kind of like stone elemental, kind of looking. Um, yeah, they're very cool as well. I cannot reveal much about that either. You might see some more soon. We have the another race, the another ancestry option, the half Estelar, which are descendants of an ancient alien race, which is basically the Estelar, and I cannot say much about this either because it's in the campaign, and it's actually explained in the ancestry option for the player as well that all of their past is shrouded in mystery, and discovering that is part of their character motivation as well in many ways. Of course, it falls to the player how they want to play it, but it's something that you can play with. Um, but yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot. There's another couple of ancestry options that we haven't revealed, and we might be adding more depending on how well the campaign does. For example, one of our first stretch goals. This is also something you're hearing first here.
Yeah.
One of our first stretch goals is the Astral Buccaneer, as I just mentioned, for the Rogue. The Rogue Ranger, actually. I'm mixing it up. Yeah, there's a lot. The stretch goals are going to add a lot of content to the book. We're thinking that we might go to like 550, 600 pages or something. Well, we'll see.
Might have
Mostly, most of the work actually, sorry, most of the work that we have to do after the campaign is basically just working on the stretch goals. Like most of the other stuff is already done, as I said.
right on.
Yeah,
Get big enough, might have split it into 2 volumes.
yeah. We had to think about that actually, but the costs for making more books are insane. Like
Oh
it's just
yeah.
insane.
Yeah, no,
And
it's
also,
brutal.
I'm a big fan of having like a big tome of myself. Like, do I want anything astral? Ah, yes. It's just like just dust off the big cover of like Starlight Arcana.
I mean, lifting those big tomes is the main way people like you and I
Yeah.
get exercise. Like you're helping everybody.
Yeah. Tagging that thing around, like I don't even want to like think about that, like having it in my bag. But yeah,
Uh
no, we're very excited for it. Like the amount of content that is in there is actually one of and the quality as well, of course, because we are trying to make everything like as good as possible, like and as good looking as possible. Because I will be the first one to say that when I open a book, I want it to be pretty. Like I'm sorry, but if something is not attractive, like like when I open something and I look at monsters, I'm like, oh, I don't really want to use that in my world. I can't picture it in my world. And yeah, if you feel this way, you're not gonna like it, of course. So we put a lot of effort into making things like good looking, and that's why I said about the maps earlier as well. They're phenomenal, and Ori basically does a fantastic job with basically breathing life into the stories that I write. So I'm very very happy she's on board for all this astral stuff. Like all of her astral maps actually are just oof. I can't wait for people to see them. I really can't wait.
well, Kelfasiel, it's been great having you on. If you're watching this video, which I mean obviously you are if you're hearing me say these words, uh this will be up on September 2nd. Go back it. There's a link below where you can follow to find more information and be notified when it's up. Do that, back it, get the sweet tarot deck, get the lovely art, get big bulging muscles from carrying this giant book.
I hope so. That will be like a side effect for buying Starlight Arcana. I didn't think of that, but that would be nice.
Health and
No, but
fitness are so important.
yeah.
All right. Well, it's been great having you on.
Thank you for having me, Garm. I really appreciate it.
It's been my pleasure. And for those of you watching, have a good night.